to define my relationship or not. Why should I define my relationship? When should I define my relationship? How should I define my relationship? Hello, everyone. You're welcome to Wise Attraction with BB Babs. And today I'll be talking to you about how to define a Christian relationship. Now, this channel, Wise Attraction, was born out of a desire to see Christian men and women make the right choice when it comes to choosing a life partner for marriage. And I believe that you will get to learn a lot from just listening to our videos. So please like, subscribe, and share our videos because there are lots of people out there that need this information. So let's get right to it. Like I said today, our topic is how to define a Christian relationship. This topic actually is a follow-on from my previous video where I talked about the umbrella brother, umbrella sister situationship. If you haven't seen that video, the link to it is within the description of this video. Please watch and share. Thank you. Now, how to define a relationship. First, I'm just going to be honest with you. Defining a relationship, albeit a Christian relationship, is a risk. And the reason why is a risk is that you might go into this definition process liking the other party, and then you go on to define the relationship and you find out that the other party just wants to be just friends, doesn't feel what you're feeling, hasn't heard from the Lord, Normally the Lord said you are my wife and things like that, and the other party hasn't heard what you've heard. The other party wants to be just friends, So at that point in time, of course, you who's interested in pursuing a courtship with that person, trying to define the relationship, of course, it's a heartbreak situation for you. So why should you define your relationship despite this risk? I'll say go ahead and define the relationship. Why? Because it's only a question of time. It's only a question of time before either of you gets hurt, whether or not you define the relationship. The only thing is that when you take that bold step of defining the relationship, you are then being in charge of when whatever happens, which is all the better, because if you leave it for too long, you'd have invested yourself, your emotions, all these things you've invested into the relationship over time will produce nothing for you, you see. And if you're in a situation where you define the relationship and you find that both of you are on the same page, you want to pursue a relationship, all the better. You go ahead and you start working towards courtship. You start doing things to firm up that decision to know for sure if that is what you really want. And then if you go to define the relationship and you find out that both of you want to stay just friends, however, whatever mixed messages have been shared between both of you have been shared in error, all the better. Clarity, certainty, peace, mutual understanding. That's why you should define your relationship regardless of the risk. Next thing I want to talk about is when should you define the relationship? Now, it's always good to get to know the other party to a good extent before defining the relationship. First of all, get to know the other person. The time you're using to get to know the other person is also an opportunity for the other party to get to know you. Another thing that's also important is decide what you want out of that relationship. Now, as a Christian, part of your decision involves prayer. Involves seeking the will of God, seeking the counsel of God regarding both of you. And of course, looking at other physical traits and other things that are very necessary, looking at their fruits, looking at their character, exploring and asking yourself, can I spend a lifetime with this person? Can I work with this person? Can I be my best in the future with this person, So you need time to look into all of these things before going ahead to say you want to have a conversation about defining a relationship. Another thing that should determine when you define a relationship can also be when you're receiving mixed messages from the other party. So I'll give an example. Let's say you're in a friendship with someone, and all of a sudden, maybe she or he starts telling you, I love you. You have a conversation. At the end of that conversation, they're like, oh, love you, bye. Okay. Then at another time, they're telling, oh, hey, sweetie, and things like that. Now what they are saying is portraying a level of intimacy towards that relationship, that the commitment between two of you and the agreement between two of you hasn't catered for. In that instance, it's very, very important to define the relationship so that you know exactly where both of you stand. You don't want a situation, you always, what you want to drive at is that you always want the level of intimacy within you and anybody to match the type of relationship and level of commitment within that relationship, because that's the only time it's going to sustain it. Let me give an example. So for instance, you're talking to someone, they're saying I love you, they're calling you all these things, you guys are encouraging it, before you start talking about intimate things and all of that. So at that point, whoever likes if one person likes the other party, the other one doesn't like the other party, you find that one person's emotion is going, one person is thinking, oh, I'm in a relationship, only for you to get to some point and the other person like, I don't understand, like, when we're not in a relationship, like, when did I say we're in a relationship? When did I ask you? For instance, if there's a guy who'll be like, when did I ask you out? When did I do this? When did I do that? And leave you high and dry in the middle of the road. So what I'll say is, if you find yourself in a situation where the level of intimacy being pulled out or drawn or insinuated by the other party, insinuated in as regards to the relationship, doesn't match the level of commitment within that relationship, that's a very, very good time, very beautiful opportunity to define the relationship. So I'll give an example for myself and my husband. Me personally, I'm really big on defining relationships. I decided really early on when I was single that I'm not going to be silent and just receive any sort of love floating by, without clarifying what exactly is going on, because sometimes it just helps you maintain the friendship that you have, no strings attached, stress-free friendship, and it helps you know without letting your feelings go. Us women, we know how to catch feelings, so it's always good to define the relationship, in my opinion. So an example would be from my life was when I was friends with my husband. We were good friends. I found him to be a really kind person, a very nice person, and we were being friends, and I just felt like, oh, this guy is such a nice friend to have. And I didn't know that he liked me. I didn't know that he was interested, because he was just kind to me, So at some point in the friendship, he then began to say I can't remember those things now, to be honest. He began to say things and ask questions that made me feel as though he was then begin to want more out of our relationship. The first time he did it, I was like, okay, maybe misunderstood. Don't jump into conclusions. The second time he did it, I said, watch this space. Something might be happening here. The third time he did it, I was like, okay, you've done this before, you've done that before, now you're doing it again. What's going on? What do you have in mind? And all of that, because that's not really reflecting where we are at right now, And of course, by this time, like I said, we were friends, so we knew each other to a good extent. Well, when I had that conversation with him, he told me he wasn't interested in going to any relationship with me and stuff like that. So it was a very interesting conversation, which brings me to my next point: is when you decide to have which is also in line with the risk, when you decide to have a defining conversation with the other party, it's very important to prepare your mind. It could go either way. It really could go either way. I don't regret having that conversation with him. He was not the first person I'd had that conversation with. And of course, today we're married, things then eventually changed. And that's the story for another day, But this is it. When you go to define a relationship, it can go either way, and you need to be mentally and emotionally prepared for whatever will come out of that definition. And also, you also need to be ready and have in mind that that definition conversation can be changing the way you relate. It's either you carry on being friends, or your friendship terminates, relationship is nowhere to be found, or you guys then go into a relationship, or you prepare to go into a relationship. So it can affect your interaction with that person in any form that you may not foresee. So it's very important to be emotionally and mentally prepared for for defining the relationship. However, that should not deter you from defining the relationship if there is a need to. Next thing I want to talk about is how to define a relationship. Now, it's defining the relationship can be a very awkward conversation to have, because sometimes, like in my case, when I had a conversation with my husband, he got a bit defensive. He was like, no, 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 that kind of thing. Of course, he revised it later, but at least it gave him an understanding that if you're gonna be doing these things to me, if you're gonna be having these conversations with me, then you better know what you want. And if you're not serious, if you don't want something serious with me, then don't have these conversations with me, because there's no point. So it's always good for people to know where to place each other, and that's one of the things that defining a relationship helps you do. So how do you define a relationship? What I'll say is, don't be too serious. Like I said with my husband, what I just said is I waited for him to do what he did before that gave me some sort of questions. And when he did it, that's when I asked him and said, okay, why are you saying this? You've done this before, you've done that before. Especially for women, I'll say be factual, because the guy can come back and just twist things, and twist your head and twist your mind. So just pick what they're doing and say, okay, these things are happening, and I like they're not in line with the level of commitment and level of agreements we currently have. Is there anything you have in mind? What are your expectations for this relationship, or what are your desires for this relationship? Also, when you're defining relationship, be prepared to be honest about your feelings. Be very, very honest. Talk about generally what are your expectations of relationship. Now, within Christianity and within traditional Christianity, what I'll say is that when going into courtship, the aim is to get married. However, if eventually you go into courtship with a particular person and you find out that there's some very strong reasons why you cannot go ahead to get married to that person, you should also feel the freedom to terminate that relationship at that point. But when defining a relationship, is a good time and a good opportunity to talk about, generally speaking, what are your expectations? If you will go into a relationship, why are you going into the relationship? What do you expect from that relationship? And also allow yourselves that freedom. But it's very important, so that even when, let's say, both of you then proceed to go into a relationship, both of you know exactly what you're expecting and what you're looking for to that relationship. Otherwise you'd have to define the relationship. You'd have to define the relationship again at some point in the future, to decide, okay, are we getting married or are we not getting married? Well, the thing with defining relationships is that at different points you have to define your relationship. So that's okay. But whenever an opportunity comes, use the opportunity effectively, so that it's not something that you find that you're defining next week, you're defining 2 weeks later, you're defining 1 month later. No, define a relationship when you've come into an agreement and a commitment with a particular person should be seasonal. Maybe let's say both of you were courting before and you want to get married, you can define and say, okay, at that point you propose and things like that. But it shouldn't be a case of, oh, I'm still unsure of where we are. So we're in a relationship, but one party is still unsure or one party is still insecure and things like that, because that clarity is not there. So that's not really good. At the point of defining the relationship, you want to be very clear about what to expect. That's why it's an opportunity to be confident, to be bold, to speak your mind, and to be honest about how you feel. And also draw that honesty and draw the same thing you're giving at that conversation. Draw it out from the other party that you're dealing with. So this is how I'll say to define a Christian relationship, and also to avoid umbrella situationships where you can be stuck in a place where you really don't know what is going on. And also, I feel there are also times where you might not need to define a relationship. Stepping back from that friendship is enough of a message. And if that doesn't convey a message, let's say for instance the other person is appearing, doing things that indicates that they have feelings for you and they are pursuing you, but they haven't come out to tell you and pursue you and stuff. If you know that you're not going to be interested in pursuing anything, you just want to be friends, or you just want to be acquaintances or whatever with this person, what you can do is take a step back. That should be enough for them to know that this is going nowhere. And also, but then of course, if they don't get the message, eventually you'd have to tell them that, okay, at this point, I view us as just friends. I appreciate you. It's always good to speak with grace whenever having this kind of conversations, because they're really sensitive. You don't want someone to come out of that conversation with you being too hurt or too broken or just being damaged in some way. So it's very important to speak gracefully and let the person know that, okay, I see us as just friends. I value your friendship. I value our interaction. However, I don't see it going further than that. Now, and that thing that I'd also like to point out is that sometimes, for especially for brothers, I will say, I'm not trying to speak of brothers or anything, but with brothers, sometimes in ministry, you're being kind to, you find yourself where you're being kind to sisters, you're doing things, as a brother within the church to support the sisters around you, but then they get the wrong message. They feel like you're interested in them, but you're not interested. You're just doing what you would do as a brother. It's always important to seize different opportunities. Now, in that case, you don't have to have special conversations with the entire church or all of the singles females in the singles ministry to let them know that, oh, I'm not chasing you and things like that. But just reiterate in your interaction, reiterate. For instance, if you're leader of youth ministry or things, because I've seen these things play out within the church, just reiterate and say, oh, I know we're getting close and stuff like that, but the reason why I'm being this and doing that is because I really feel that this is my purpose for being your friend, just supporting you in this area, just this, or what my perception for both of us is just friends. I value you as a sister in the Lord, just be really clear and be really precise and just reiterate it from time to time so that she knows that it's not beyond this, because there have been situations whereby the leader of the youth ministry or leader of whatever ministry, he's a single guy, he's good looking, he's really nice, and which sister doesn't like a nice guy, a kind guy, caring brother, he's just being who he is, and then you see lots of sisters are just falling, and before you know it, by the time he gets married, there are rumors flying about, and the guy himself might be innocent in that case, but what he did is that he didn't define his relationships. And in that case, you don't need to do special definition. Just reiterate why you're friends with that person and emphasize that they are your sister in the Lord, if you know that you're not interested in pursuing anything further with them. So that's it for me in terms of how to define a relationship. Lastly, before I go, I received some questions on this defining a relationship matter. I'm going to read two of those questions and I'm going to provide answers for them. First question is, I've been seeing this guy for over 5 years and no signs of a ring yet. About a year ago, a new guy started working at my company and we seem to have really good chemistry. Though I told him I am not available, he seems very persistent since day one and is eager to marry me. What do I do? Now, clearly this question is from a lady, and what I would say is, this new guy at work, first of all, put that situation aside, because currently you're in a situation where you're in a relationship with somebody for 5 years. It's important to define that relationship. 5 years is long enough. It's a good time to define and find out, first of all, where you are. What do you want out of that relationship? Do you want to marry this person? 5 years, you've gathered enough data. Do you want to spend the rest of your life with this person? Are you convinced? Do you understand? If this is where you should be going, if this is what you should be doing. So if you have that conversation with yourself and you find that, yes, you still want to pursue, you still want to get married, then it's a good time to have a defining relationship talk with the other party whom you're in a relationship with and find out where exactly they are. At this point, since it's 5 years gone, I would say it's good to set timelines. If both of you agree that you're getting married, you set a timeline and you start acting and working towards it. Or if there are other significant reasons why the other party feels that you can't take that step right now, identify those reasons and start working on them. Find out if those are things that can be worked through or if those are things that would definitely put an end to your relationship. But at the end of that defining talk, you need to be very, very clear on what's happening. If you have the defining talk with this person and you find out that you guys are going ahead to get married, of course, with timelines and things like that, then fine. That party at work doesn't even come into it. You just go along with your relationship, get married, and move on with your life. If you have that talk and you find out that this is the end of the road, I still will say it's not the time to move into another relationship. That person, if they truly love you and they're truly concerned about you, they will wait for you. What you then need to do is, of course, you'll be brokenhearted. It's time to nurse your wound. It's time to heal properly so that you can see clearly to then assess this other new party to find out whether you should be going into a relationship with this person or you should be with a completely new person, or you should just go back into waiting till you meet someone else who will be the right fit and the right person for you to be married to. So that's my answer to that question. The second question I'll be taking today is, I am afraid that after defining the relationship, I will lose out yet again on another sister. What should I do? Now, this is a very, very valid concern for brothers, because within the traditional Christian view, which I am fully a part of, we wait for the brothers to make the move. And sometimes you find that as a brother, you've asked one, two, three people, you felt convinced, you felt convicted, and yet the answer yet and yet again is always a no. Firstly, it's very important to understand your identity, understand who you are. Don't define yourself by the no's or the yeses you get. Don't allow your ego to be bruised. Don't allow yourself to get to a point where you're really hurt. You're just deterred and down and out as a result of that. That's what I would say. And second, the thing is that you need to keep asking. If you find yourself in a situation, you do your search, and that thing you need to do is also observe the sister. Sometimes you find that the message was already there, before you went ahead and asked. Sometimes when you interact with a lady, you will know whether she likes you or she does not like you. So sometimes if you've observed her and she's not doing things to indicate that she likes you, you can just not even bother asking. But if she's doing things, of course, you interact with her, you get to know her, and you see that you guys are having a good time together. In your interaction is flowing, things are getting on right and well with both of you, then you know that, okay, maybe you should have that defining talk and definitely put your question out there, make your desires known to her and see what she comes back with. I mean, it's a really sad situation to keep hearing no, 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 but you definitely should carry on. If your desire is to be married, if your desire is to spend the rest of your life with someone, then clearly you have to carry on. You can't give up. Do not give up, brother. Okay, I have a couple of questions. I'm just trying to see which other one I can take right now within this video because I don't want the video to be too long. Okay, I have been with my man for 3 years plus, but he doesn't want to start something officially yet. He said he wants to focus on getting himself ready. Is this okay, or am I being too hasty? I will be entering into my late 30s and don't know how long I am expected to wait. Now, 3 years is enough time for anybody to decide on what they want. If he says that he wants to focus on getting himself ready, you're in your late 30s. I'm wondering how old is he? That in his 30s, I want to believe you're not in your late 30s trying to, anyway, I don't know, like, let's not stereotype, he could be any age. But if he's in his late 20s, even if he's in his early 30s, in his mid 30s, he should be ready, to some extent. Well, you can have a conversation with him and find out the specific aspects where he feels like he needs to be ready, and find out if that's something that both of you can work through and work on. And also demand honesty from him. He needs to be very crystal clear and very honest with you about what he wants, and also be very honest and very crystal clear with him about what you want. let him know that he can be free to tell you. And of course, before you have this conversation with him, you need to deal with yourself, deal with your heart. Know that conversation can go either way. You can leave there with a heartbreak, but it's better to be heartbroken and move on than to be deceived and get heartbroken eventually. Is one thing to be deceived and not know that you're being deceived, but it's another thing to be deceived and allow the deception to continue. These are two different things. So you deal with yourself, be ready for anything, have the conversation, know if his reasons are good enough, if those are things that can be worked through, or you can move on. Personally, I don't think you're being too hasty at the end of 3 years. I do not think you're being too hasty. So it's good to define the relationship with him and know wherever that takes you so that you can move on with your life and with yourself. So that's it from me. Thank you very much for watching this video. Wise Attraction with BB Babs. Please like, subscribe, and share, and expect my videos once every week. Do have a lovely week. Bye.